Ask Reddit, what's the craziest reason you had to fire someone? Part 2. Not me, but my dad. He has a small handyman company with less than a handful of employees. His tools somehow have the habit of growing legs when he's at construction sites, so he rigorously writes his name on everything with a permanent marker. One day, shortly after he hired someone new, his folding ruler is missing. He asks around if anyone has seen his folding ruler, but that doesn't seem to be the case. He doesn't think much of it. Sometimes things get lost. The next day he sees the new hire with a familiar looking folding ruler. He asks him to see it. A new hire refuses. Dad tells him that he's his boss and insists he show him the ruler. He complies under pressure. Sure enough, there's my dad's name on it in the capital letters and bold letters. Now, that couldn't have been an honest mistake, and there probably wouldn't have been any repercussions if he simply said, "Oh, my bad, must have put the wrong one in my pocket. Here's your ruler." But the new hire insisted that this was his ruler, and that the name on the side of it wasn't my dad's handwriting, but rather a note the new hire had written on it himself to remember my dad's name. What makes it even more stupid is that my dad's company pays for the tools for his employees. He could have simply asked for a folding ruler, and my dad would have given him one for free. But no, he needs to steal the boss's folding ruler and then give the stupidest lie imaginable as an excuse. Profanity-filled road rage ran through an ambulance PA system at a crowded intersection. I had complaints coming in for well over a month. I feel that an ambulance should be allowed to chew you out over the PA for garbage driving. When I was a bank teller, a fellow teller got fired for stuffing her purse with a strap of $100 bills every day, amounting to $10,000. Here's the interesting part. She always put the strap back into her teller drawer at the end of the day. She did this for months and months, apparently without anyone noticing. But when the camera auditors finally did catch it, she was confronted and fired. When they asked her why she put a strap of money in her purse each day, but always put it back, she said that if the bank were ever robbed, then she could just take the money home because everybody would have assumed it was taken by the robber. I worked at a pet store and was the lead cashier, so I had to train this girl who didn't think she had to abide by the uniform because it's just, well, the store name here, and doesn't count as a real job. But that was a warning, that despite her thinking she did not need to follow the uniform rules. Then when ringing up customers, she actually told customers they couldn't buy certain items because we were running low, and she planned on getting a pet soon and wanted these items. I apologized and rung them up. The second warning with me explaining how that's not how it works, and she should shop when she's off the clock. Finally, my manager fired her when she tried to steal one of the cats that were up for adoption, after being told she needed to wait for approval after they do a home visit, and make sure she can care for the cat. Her excuse for trying to steal the cat? Her landlord doesn't allow pets, so she wouldn't be approved, and she'd be a much better pet parent than anyone else who wanted the cat, and much better than any of the customers we got. The girl didn't even last a week. I'm training a new girl. We're sitting at a computer together. The whole time I'm training her, she's scanning the perimeter around her. She's asking about this guy, is he single? What about that guy? She's paying very little to no attention to what I'm telling her about, the job. She's not even looking at what I'm doing as I'm demonstrating the work to her. She's rubbernecking every male who walks past. At first, I was nice. Okay, did you just see what I did there? Now when this happens, we do that, etc., etc. Her eyes were glazed over. She wasn't absorbing anything, I could tell. Nice wasn't working. After a time, I said to her very sharply, "Are you here to work, or are you here looking for a boyfriend? Because if you are not here to work, I'm going to need to find someone else for this job." I had hiring authority. That snapped her into reality for about 15 minutes. I finally said, "It's break time." She smiled and said, "I'm going to go up to the 4th floor and see if there's any fresh meat up there." After break time, I sent her into the fax room to collect some faxes I needed. The mail guy was in there changing rolls of fax paper. He came out of the mailroom and said, "I think there's something wrong with your new girl." He was very nervous. I said what happened. Apparently, she was in the fax room, which tended to get hot because of all the machines in there. She had perched her ass up on the edge of the table, hiked her dress up to where her underwear was showing, arched her back, unbuttoned the front of her dress and fanned herself with a sheath of fax pages and said, "Oh, it's just so hot in here." Yeah, like that. Like the opening of a porno. I totally believed him. I believed she did that. 100% she totally did that. I called her temp agency and said she's not working out. I think this was under 2 hours. I have stories about temps for days, lol. Used to work at a laser tag facility. It was mostly high schoolers who worked there. One guy had only been working there a couple of months when he came in on a field trip with some classmates, including his girlfriend. He thought it would be a good idea to sneak his girlfriend into the fog room inside the maze during the game, have sex, and then brag about it to the management team. Underage sex at work is, unsurprisingly, not something you should be engaging in, and definitely not something you should be publicizing. We'd hold those overnight events where you'd come in from midnight to 6 a.m. and play all night long. Had a guy showing up reeking of booze and clearly high on cocaine to work that shift. He got fired on the spot, and I'd occasionally run into him on the bus afterwards. Man, that was the best job though. I have so many insane stories from those times. Harassment. He harassed virtually every person in the department on sexual, racial, and religious grounds. Human Resources put up a fight while I had people crying and quitting because of him. I worked with a guy like this when I was still in high school. So many of us complained about him to the boss or owner, but he continued to let it slide for months. I put up with it till after school ended and finally quit along with 2 other people. The main boss or owner proceeded to say we had been immature about the whole thing. When I was working at Burger King, our restaurant manager was away on maternity leave, so we had someone from another store come in over that time to fill the role. He ended up hiring someone who had worked there 5 to 6 years previously. High turnover, so a lot of hiring and leaving. The few staff that had known her before she'd left hated her, but had no idea why she left. She even passed all the checks from the head office before she was hired. Restaurant manager comes back about a month later after she's been hired, takes one look at her and rages. Like my RM is yelling at this girl. She's yelling at the manager that hired her and all the crew that had known her when she was here last. Obviously, none of us knew what was going on, but it turns out this girl hadn't left, she'd been fired. And management at the time hadn't told anyone that, just that she'd quit. This girl had scammed BK by pretending to be pregnant, fake ultrasounds, plans, baby shower, the whole lot, and then took paid maternity leave so she could go work somewhere else because it was seasonal work with better pay, with the idea of having a job for the off-season to come back to. I have no idea how she got through the head office checks, but she was fired that day. Super impressive when you consider that I'm in New Zealand, so getting fired is usually a month-plus long process here. I used to work for a very well-known cruise company. A guy told me the story of his firing one night. Obviously, he was able to overturn the decision since he was telling me. Every once in a while, we would have events for crew, and they would be given free snacks, chicken strips, mozzarella sticks, etc. After the party, this guy took 2 chicken strips back to his room and placed them in his refrigerator. Due to health and safety regulations on board, nothing that can spoil is allowed in refrigerators. This is important for later. During a weekly cabin inspection, the inspectors found the 2 chicken strips he forgot about. Those officers told their bosses, who informed the captain of the ship and the cruise director, informed the shoreside partners who make all the decisions, and the shoreside partners recommended the employee be terminated for stealing from the company. Again, not for breaking the rule of having something that can spoil in his fridge, stealing 2 free chicken strips from a work event. Somehow he was able to overturn his firing, but he still received unusually harsh punishments for his crime. Guy took home 2 free chicken strips from a work party. Officers found them, and the higher-ups in the company decided he should be fired. He said, "My ex-wife died, and there's no one to take care of our kids. I needed a week off to sort everything out. Ex called to talk to him. Boom!" One of the guys went to lunch with short hair and came back with a ponytail down to his ass. Identical twins that were sharing the job. All the guys knew and thought it was funny. Yikes. For number 2, I think I would have let it continue until they bragged about it. Then I would say, "The 2 of you are making 1 paycheck, In what way are you winning? Neither wanted a full-time job. My boss joked to keep the better worker, but in truth, liability would be a nightmare, as the job they were doing was pretty dangerous. Everyone knew, except management. A guy was hired at the metal fab shop I was working at. He had been laid off when we were slow. He was rehired on a Friday and started Monday. Goes and does his drug test first thing. He failed. Apparently he had celebrated being rehired over the weekend. It was funny listening to my boss say, "Are you kidding me? You knew our testing policy. You couldn't wait for 3 days." I had to fire a pizza delivery driver because he threatened another driver with the giant rocker knife we used to cut pizzas. His reason was the other driver was gay and he didn't like his decadent lifestyle. Describing it as decadent is the gayest part of the story. I was a florist and had a 40-something woman delivering for me. I received a call from the building manager of a brand new office building with only one tenant, telling me my driver wrote on the elevator wall with a Sharpie. They had the video showing that she was the only person to use the elevator during the time the vandalism took place. The worst part for me was this happened a few days before Valentine's Day. The saddest was a lady that smelled like alcohol pretty frequently. I don't think she was drunk on the job, maybe some shots done at lunch, combined with sweating out the prior night. But the other members of the team started to complain about it, and it was becoming disruptive. Interestingly enough, there was someone I worked with that always smelt of pickle juice. Turns out he was drunk at work the whole time and masking the smell with pickles, which works to a certain extent, but not perfect, apparently. Manager showed up drunk to an overnight shift he wasn't working, and then got into a fight with 2 associates. Begged my associate manager not to tell me what happened. It didn't seem to remember there were cameras all over the store. Oh, also the other manager at another job who sexually harassed 3 different employees and got a 4th pregnant. The first 3 came forward once we began an investigation after the 4th told us about the pregnancy.